Upon awakening, a man and woman independently grapple with an uncanny sensation of crying upon waking up, with no memory of the dreams but an enduring sense of profound loss. This mysterious feeling fuels their relentless search for that which is missing.
The sole memory they retain is the sight of a beautiful comet passing close to Earth.
Mitsuhide, the woman, one day wakes up puzzled, particularly by her own body, to such an extent that she even begins to explore herself physically to confirm her reality.
However, her younger sister walks in during this peculiar act, summoning her for breakfast. In the following days, Mitsuha's grandmother and sister recount how she had been behaving oddly. Just as she begins to ponder their remarks, a town-wide broadcast about an upcoming mayoral election interrupts her thoughts. They choose to switch off the broadcast and turn on the TV, which broadcasts news of a comet that is expected to be visible to the naked eye for several days in a month. While walking to school with her sister and the friends Sayaka and Katsuhiko, Mitsuba is troubled when her friends also note her strange behavior, attributing it to stress. They encounter Mitsuba's father, the current mayor, during a campaign speech. His public reminder to Mitsuba about maintaining a good posture only embarrasses her, making her hasten to school. During class, she discovers a mysterious note in her notebook and is chided by the teacher for seemingly forgetting her own name. Her friends mention her disoriented state the previous day, of which Mitsuba has no memory. Mitsuba shares that she's been having a strange dream, feeling like she's living someone else's life. Sayaka suspects it might be stress-induced amnesia given an upcoming ceremony Mitsuha has to participate in. Frustrated, Mitsuha wishes to escape her rural town. At home, her grandmother shares their ancestral stories and emphasizes their duty to preserve their traditions, especially at the shrine. Mitsuha's father is disinterested in preserving these traditions, instead focusing on politics. Displeased is her grandmother. When the ceremony arrives, Mitsuha and her sister perform a traditional dance in front, produce the oldest form of sake as per tradition, and feel embarrassed in front of their peers. Overwhelmed, Mitsuba expresses a desire to be a handsome Tokyo guy in her next life. The phone alarm rings, awakening a high school boy named Taki, who is perplexed by his unfamiliar surroundings and his appearance in the mirror. After an odd interaction with his departing father, Taki sets off for school in Tokyo. Taki's friends, Tsukasa and Shinta, notice his strange behavior, almost as if he is a different person. Taki ends up getting a job at a restaurant where he struggles with his duties. A difficult customer creates trouble and Taki's older colleague steps in to mitigate the situation. After their shift, Taki helps Miki repair her skirt, impressing her with his unexpected sewing skills. The following day, a man named Taki awakens feeling disoriented. He discovers a name written on his hand and a note on his phone detailing events he has no recollection of. Discussing this with his friends, he learns that his behavior was peculiar the previous day. His bewilderment escalates when he reaches his workplace, and his co-workers express their resentment, accusing him of getting too close to a co-worker named Miki. Conversely, upon awakening, Mitsuve is startled to find her arm covered in unfamiliar writing. Her surprise intensifies when her sister walks in, inquiring if she will engage in the inexplicable behavior she displayed the previous day. Even more shocking, she discovers from classmates that she had acted uncharacteristically aggressive at school. Reflecting on these strange occurrences, both Teke and Mitsuha realize they have been switching bodies intermittently. The swaps occur at random during their sleep with no discernible pattern. Both jot down crucial information for the other to mitigate potential damage during these swaps. Despite these measures, adapting to each other's lives proves challenging. Mitsuba nudges Taki towards a relationship with Miki, while Taki, when in Mitsuba's body, receives a flood of love letters from her classmates, causing mutual frustration. During one body swap, Taki in Mitsuba's body is taken by her grandmother to a shrine in the mountains. Her grandmother narrates tales of the deity, Musube, symbolizing the confluence of threads, people, and the flow of time. After reaching the destination, Taki learns the shrine's deity resides within a stone cave nestled amidst a tranquil field. As instructed, Taki leaves their ritual's sake offering in the cave, learning that their essence bound the deity to the shrine. Suddenly, Mitsuha's grandmother announces her awareness of Mitsuha's dreaming state, prompting Taki to wake up, finding himself inexplicably tearful. However, his focus soon shifts to an impending date with Miki. Meanwhile, Mitsuha wakes up disappointed at missing the date with Miki. and finds herself crying for reasons unknown. Taki struggles to maintain his composure during the date with Miki. Although Mitsuha leaves behind some tips for him, Taki's attention strays, captivated by a picture resembling the scenery from Mitsuha's hometown. Miki realizes her secondary role on the date and decides to end it prematurely, asserting that Taki's affections lay elsewhere. As Taki checks his phone once again, he finds a note from Mitsuha mentioning the comet that should be visible at the end of the date. Looking up, Taki sees no such spectacle. He dials Mitsuba's number. Meanwhile, Mitsuba receives a call from her friend Katsuhiko, inviting her to a festival where they can watch the comet. Though hesitant, she decides to join, surprising her friends with a new haircut. As they speculate about her change of style, she directs their attention to the spectacular sight of the comet soaring above them. In that moment, a fragment of the comet detaches and descends towards Earth, getting closer and closer to them. He concludes you will update Mitsuha about the unsuccessful date when they next swap bodies, but that day never arrives. Days turn into weeks without any body swap occurring. One day, equipped with his collection of sketches, he embarks on a quest to locate Mitsuha's village. As he prepares to board the train departing Tokyo, he's intercepted by Miki and Shikasa, who have noticed his recent peculiar behavior and have decided to accompany him to ensure his well-being. They assume he has met someone online and is now on his way to Mahara in person. Shock is considerable when Taki discloses he doesn't know where this person lives and his only leads are his drawn sketches. While dining in a secluded, family-run ramen shop, Taki is ready to abandon the pursuit, labeling it a misguided idea from the start. Suddenly, the shop's waitress recognizes the scene from one of his sketches, revealing that it depicts the town of Itamori. Her husband confirms, stating that the sketch is an exact representation of the town. Excited by the news, Taki's joy is short-lived as they learn that the town no longer exists. Confused, Taki learns from the shop owner, who graciously offers to drive them to the site, that a large piece of the passing comet struck Itamori, obliterating it and claiming the lives of most of its inhabitants. It takes some time for Taki to absorb the fact that Mitsuha, whom he had been communicating just a few weeks prior, was a resident of the annihilated town. As he retrieves his phone to show the text notes they shared, they suddenly begin to vanish until all of them are gone. Staying at an inn for the night, Taki, Miki, and Tsukasa gather as much information as possible about the catastrophe. When they discover a book listing all the deceased, Taki is shattered to find Mitsu his name, along with her families and friends, amongst the confirmed fatalities. Unable to comprehend his experiences, he starts to believe that it was all a figment of his imagination and narrative concocted from news coverage. In one of the books about Itamori, Miki notes that Taki constantly wears a braided cord around his wrists, traditional craft from the region. When attention is drawn to it, Taki says he received it from someone in the past, though we can't remember who. Despite his memory lapse, continues to wear it as a talisman. He awakens once again in Mitsuha's body, overwhelmed with emotion, crying, and simultaneously confirming his reality. This unanticipated emotional display frightens Mitsuda's sister, who flees to school alone. Taki switches on the television and realizes it is the day the disaster is scheduled to occur. After sighing in relief, he contemplates how to prevent the impending tragedy. Mitsuda's grandmother enters and, despite Taki's surprise, discerns that it's not her granddaughter standing before her. Taki is astonished at her perceptiveness, leading her to reveal that she too had experienced similar strange, vivid dreams in her youth but has since forgotten the specifics. Katsuhiko assumes the responsibility of acquiring the explosives from his father's construction company, while Sayaka is assigned to stand by in the school's broadcast room to disseminate the emergency message once the power goes out. Taki's role involves persuading Mitsuba's father to aid in the evacuation. Sayaka, however, grows apprehensive upon hearing the plan, fearing that their actions, lacking any concrete evidence, could lead to severe consequences. Yet Katsuhiko is fully committed. He presents Sayaka with his research on. Meanwhile, awakening in Takeu's body, Mitsuha finds herself at the shrine and wonders about his intentions. As she leaves the shrine and ascends the crater's hill, she takes in the sight of her town, or rather, the remains of it, as it now lies in ruins. In that moment, she recalls everything and comes to the startling realization of her death. Meanwhile, Taki pushes the bicycle to its maximum, pedaling uphill to reach Mitsuha of growing conviction that she's at the shrine taking hold within him. He recalls an incident from 3 years prior when Mitsuha impulsively decided to visit him in Tokyo, despite not knowing how to locate him. Despite her nervousness about the prospect of meeting him, she was determined to take that chance. Upon arriving in Tokyo, she attempted to call him, but to no avail. She resorted to visiting places she frequented while in his body, hoping to run into him. She harbored a deep-seated hope that they would recognize each other instantly, and that he would be glad to see her. As she was about to give up, she spotted him at a train station and hurriedly boarded his train. Gathering her courage, she approached him and upon verifying his identity, spoke up. But when she called him by his name, his response, asking if she was, cut her deeply. She simply apologized for the inconvenience and disembarked at the next stop. As Mitsuo prepared to disembark, Taki impulsively asked her name. He hurriedly shouted it back at him, the very chord he cherished as a good luck charm. She disappeared into the crowd immediately after. Meanwhile, Taki, determined to reach the shrine, Katsuko's bicycle on his uphill climb. Overcome with emotion, he realized she had found him 3 years earlier. Arriving at the crater, Taki called out to Mitsuha, and she responded. Although they could hear each other, they remained invisible to each other. Desperate to find each other, they tried and failed to touch hands when they crossed paths, leaving them feeling despondent. Yet, as Squilate gave way to night, reality seemed to warp, allowing them to finally meet. Mitsudo found herself in her own body. Taki and their joy was palpable upon finally seeing each other. He told her he'd come to find her, but it had been challenging due to the vast distance. Mitsuha, aware she had perished on that day, wondered how this was possible. Taki confessed he'd drunk her sake, leaving her embarrassed and calling him a pervert, not only for drinking her sake, but also for touching her chest while he was in her body. This elicited an apology from Taki, which led Mitsuha to notice her braided cord around his wrist. He handed it back to her, explaining how he'd held onto it for the past 3 years. She swiftly tied it back into her hair, soliciting a compliment from him, which he awkwardly failed to give. They both laughed heartily at this. Taki briefed her on his plan to save the townsfolk and her remaining responsibilities. As mate approached, he suggested they write each other's names on their palms to remember each other. She agreed readily, but before she could write anything, mate fell and she vanished. Taki swore to find her again, no matter where she was, but as he kept repeating her name, it began to fade from his memory. This upset him greatly, and he started yelling her name. But his pleas only echoed back. Meanwhile, Mitsuba was rushing towards the power station, repeating Taki's name to ensure she wouldn't forget. Katsuhiko showed up with the explosives, and after confirming the comet's trajectory with Mitsuba, they relayed the instructions to Sayaka to begin broadcasting once the emergency power was activated. After setting the charges, he drove back to town on Katsuhiko's scooter. The explosives detonated, plunging the town into darkness and triggering the emergency broadcast system. At the town hall, they were inundated. Keiseiko's father found him at the festival grounds, questioning his strange behavior. Suddenly, they witnessed the comet fragmenting, a sight being watched by people worldwide. Most predicted the falling fragments were unlikely to impact any settlements. Observing the spectacle, Taki from 3 years prior stepped out of his father's apartment, watching the comet fall in the distance. In the meantime, Mitsuo was rushing towards the town hall, hoping to persuade her father to aid the evacuation. Her mind was filled with a fervent need to remember Taki's name.